Hey there, third culture community. My name is Matthew Abrams. I am the founder of an organization called Mycelium, which is an intergenerational learning community that is pretty radical, non-traditional. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute. But my roots began in the Northeast of the US. I grew up in a pretty privileged environment, graduated high school, and had what seemed like all these opportunities, but really it was go to college. So 100% of my graduating high school class went to college. So obviously I was part of that 100%. I went on to college in Ithaca, New York. And by the time I graduated college, I had very little understanding of who I was or my role in the world. And I saw all my friends around me just getting jobs, and that was the extent of what I knew was possible. So I moved to New York City. I got a job, and I liked it. I was working at a talent agency in New York, and early 20s, all my clients were actors and models, and lots of parties, lots of fun times. But 9/11 happened shortly thereafter, and it was kind of like the world saying, what are you going to do with this beautiful, sacred life of yours? And I had no idea, but I knew that I needed to go figure that out. So at the same time, I had a roommate who just returned from spending a year and a half traveling Eastern Europe and the Middle East. And he shared with me all these experiences that he had and the people that he met, and a light bulb went off. And I just realized, that people can just do something like that, which seemed pretty radical to me at the time, and B, that I needed to do that. So I moved out of New York City, moved back home with my mom at 24 years old, not a very glamorous or sexy move. I worked for about 6 months, handyman, carpentry, odd jobs, saved about $10,000, bought a van, spent 9 months traveling the U.S., living and working in really diverse elements of cultures around the U.S., herding cattle on a Blackfoot Reservation in Montana, worked on a fishing boat in Alaska, went down to work at a youth hostel in Maui, Hawaii. I lived and worked with a woman who taught poetry to inmates in a high security prison in a small town in Alabama. And basically, after these 9 months, I came back to the Northeast, and everything was the same. My friends were still doing the same thing, but I was different. I couldn't go back to the worldview that I had before. I had just seen so much more in the world, and I realized that in those 9 months, I had learned more about myself. I had learned more about the world. I had learned more about my connection to the world than I had in 16 years inside the classroom. So I started to ask the question, why do we do education the way that we do education? I think in a lot of ways, there's a lot of value in the kind of traditional education system. But at the same time, we aren't asked really significant questions like, what is it that brings you alive? What is your role in the world? What is what is this sense of alignment? Nor do we learn how to really focus on communicating effectively with people that are different than ourselves, being vulnerable, being courageous, going to places that feel uncomfortable, and developing a sense of value and worldview that helps us ground in who we are. So I didn't quite have my role on this planet defined, but I did find this amazing vehicle for learning, which was travel. And I spent the next 6 years traveling as a photojournalist, spent time in about 36 countries, having these amazing experiences, connecting with people that were so different from myself, but at the same time, similar. Our external contexts were so diverse, but at the core, there were many of us that were so similar. And in that similarity, I was able to reach out into different worldviews and different experiences. And since there was that element of familiarity, I was really able to kind of feel into those different stories, those different narratives, and build some degree of empathy. And I think that that's what this sense of third culture is all about. It's not necessarily this culture or that culture, and therefore you're in a third culture. But I think it's more of this sense of malleability, this chameleon-like component where at the core, we're humans. We have our fears, we have our concerns, we have the things that excite us, our passions, our values, etc. But we're able to ground in that which is ourself, and at the same time, that sense of grounding enables us to try on other experiences. The sense of third culture for me is always learning, always becoming. And that's what I realized that education was. The etymological root of education is about drawing out that which is in us. And that through traveling, that through showing up as a third culture kid or adult, as the case may be for me, has been really significant. I realize I don't need to be traveling to do that. I just need to be wearing this lens of the learner, of connecting authentically with others. So at the end of these altogether 8 years of travel, I realized that we can do education in a different way. We can do education in a way that really does create the conditions for us to explore who we are at the core, what our purpose is on this planet. And we do that not so much through the kind of expert student model that we've all been acculturated with. We do that in relationship. We do that connecting authentically with people who are different than us. We do that through experiences that really push our boundaries and then create the conditions for us to come back. Going out on the edge like an explorer, having experiences, meeting people, leaning into that learning edge that is often really uncomfortable and humbling, but then coming back with the harvest of those nutrients and gems and nuggets, and integrating that back in, and we continue to learn, we continue to grow. And it's a really beautiful way to stay away from dogmas, to really continue to cultivate critical thinking, interpersonal communication, problem solving, things that I think are really, really key to the world today as things are changing. In this 4-year institution, people are going in, young adults are going in and learning a craft or a trade or about a field that is really antiquated by the time they come out. So there's a new need around education, and that is focusing more and more on building the capacities to be a learner, to be agile, to be grounded in values and principles, to learn quickly, to connect with people that are different, to be able to show up and develop response ability, like truly the ability to respond authentically as the external context is changing so quickly. So in realizing this, one, the context of the field of education as it is, realizing that there's a need, and then also at the same time having this really profound experience over 8 years, traveling to almost 40 countries, I learned A, that there's a need, and B, how we can address that need. So I started about 6 years ago this alternative learning program called Mycelium. Now, the term mycelium is really significant. Mycelium is the vegetative part of the mushroom, or the root system of a mushroom. And it's this underground network that connects into the roots of trees and plants, and it's intelligent. It can actually transfer information and nutrients across the forest floor to where that nutrients is needed. So it can take, say, phosphorus or zinc and realize that there's a abundance in one area of the forest and a deficiency in the other area of the forest. So it creates that channel, that nutrient pathway that allows the nutrients and information to flow throughout the forest, with the one goal of maintaining the health and vitality of the host ecosystem or the forest. So I believe that we learn this way. We don't have, in nature, there isn't a teacher. There's many teachers. Everything is a teacher. So what Mycelium, the learning organization, believes is that we are all experts and we are all learners. And the role of the school is simply to open up the channels so we can create learning environments, create the conditions for that information and nutrients to flow where it needs to flow. We have everything we need, whether that's learning a specific skill, whether that's building an awareness around race, power, and privilege, whether that's understanding who we are and what our purpose is in this world. So we have developed this methodology and pedagogy that really supports diverse people coming together and learning from one another. And that really leads to this kind of like global mindset that I know is really fundamental to the third culture. And it's this, for me at least, it's this belief that I can learn from anyone, anywhere, and I can be confident and grounded in who I am anywhere, in any context. Not to say that I'm going to be comfortable. In fact, I think part of this kind of like global citizen mindset is having the mindset of a learner and continuously pushing myself to the edges of my comfort zone and being respectful and being curious and not coming in as an expert, not wanting to tell my story, but really knowing that my story exists in the very fabric of other people's lives. When I came back from that 9-month trip around the US, I realized that in experiencing the diversity of the world out there, I was actually experiencing the diversity of the world within me. Once I saw at least this connection that I had with every person that I came across, I was able to build a respect for them and for the learning that I could take from them, because it was an integral part of who I was. And I think that that's one problem with education as it is it's so removed, it's so reduced. We learn about things, but they're in a textbook or they're in a video, and we don't get to experience them, and we don't get to cultivate the connection that we have with them. And it's only when we can establish that connection that I believe that we can really care about something. So that's what Mycelium is about. We host these learning programs that we call learning journeys, and they come in a couple different containers. We have a couple coming up that I think could be interesting to some of the third culture community out there. We are currently hosting a 33-day walk across El Camino de Santiago in Spain, which is very facilitated. And what I mean by that is there are activities and questions and facilitated experiences that are really designed to help people navigate significant transitions in their life. So you may have just graduated college or high school and are asking what's next. You may be mid-level career and saying it's time for a change, or I just graduated, or I just retired and I want to live these kind of sunset years with intention. These 33 days are dedicated to exploring who are you, and what are the options that you have available to you at this time, and strategizing around how to go make that happen. And another program that we're offering in February, that is happening again in May of 2017. And in February, we have a 1-week program in Costa Rica that is focusing on spirituality and social change. So asking the question, what is the role of spirituality in social change work on this planet? So I'm happy to talk more with anyone. You can contact me directly at matthew@mycelium.is. That is mycelium.is, as in Sam. And you can learn more about our offerings at mycelium.is. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I wish you continued learning in your ever unfolding travels. Bless.